All right, what is going on, ladies and gentlemen and big dogs? How is it going? I am no one. And today we have a doozy of a video because last Friday was the much anticipated, much delayed October live stream. Today's video will not be covering the Summoner, but the huge announcement that Ashes of Creation will be going to early access on Steam in December. There's a lot of talk about it, so let's dive right into it. First things first, we have to talk about the communication we received before last week, and for that, I'm going to have to exude a lot of BDE, Big Dad energy. For those of you that do not know, this live stream was delayed last week, which brought forward a lot of questions from the community asking if the servers will wipe and will we be starting over. I talked about it on my last video last week that I thought it was funny that so many people have trust issues because Margaret, the communications director, stated multiple times that there would be no fresh starts and no wipes. I even said that if they go back and wipe early on that, it would be a huge communications miss by the team. And lo and behold, it was a huge communications miss.
Then we will be wiping the Alpha 2 realms as we had mentioned previously.
Now, before the quote, "it's just an alpha bro," unquote, white knights pile in and tell me that it's just an alpha and things are subject to change and all the other things that they have heard Steven say countless times, I know. I've been here for 3 years now and I've put hundreds of hours into every phase of Alpha 2.
Hi there. Is there a project you're working on?
I know more than you.
All right.
This is not about them switching up and changing from not wiping to wiping. It is about the lie. The reason we know it's a lie is the first iteration of the Ashes of Creation page on Steam was October 20th, about 2.5 weeks before Margaret was telling the community that there would be no wipe. Now, either Margaret knew and lied about it, or other people like Steven knew and didn't relay that information to Margaret, hanging her integrity out to dry. Words matter to me. They're important. And I try to be very clear on this channel what I mean. If I say that, as an example, every tank is a self-centered asshole, then I mean it. If I say that I like pancakes, it does not mean that I hate waffles. And I want the communication from the communications director to carry the same weight. Misspeaking is an accident. Lying is intentional. Also, as an aside, I don't think that every tank is a self-centered asshole. It was just a joke to get your guys' attention. Most tanks are self-centered assholes. Now moving on, Steven, you can't harp on about the MMORPG community as a whole and state that they are like beaten dogs that have been treated poorly, and you understand where they're coming from, but this time is different, only for this time not to be different. If you're planning a server wipe, it probably means you've got enough information from this testing phase and you're ready to move on to the next one. Have some respect for the community and just tell them the truth so that they don't waste hours testing an environment you no longer need information for. It's not the wipe that's a big deal. This is my 5th one, and I've always planned for another one coming. It's the lack of respect for the tester's time that's the annoyance, and I've been hearing it from a lot of testers that have been in the environment for as long as I have been. People that have wanted to be here and have been around for every other wipe are not happy with this flip-flop due to how the communication was laid out. It can be a lot better going forward. Now, on to the announcement itself. As I said, come December 11th, Ashes of Creation will be in early access on Steam, where they will adopt the Steam return policy, and the price point of $100 will be dropped to $50 for a purchase. And this has raised concerns from the community in a variety of ways. Intrepid has stated that this game is fully funded, even as early as last Friday. But they need more testers, and this is just the next step in production. But the MMORPG community has seen a lot of Kickstarter games go to early access too early, which is typically either a last gasp from the project before they shut it all down, or the scam profits bad actors take in order to exit. Now the question is, does this apply to Ashes of Creation? Let's break it down. First, let's look at early access sales. It took Ashes of Creation 6 to 7 years of production to get to 100,000 Alpha 2 purchases. And although it is releasing on Steam at a much cheaper price than what it was selling for before, it also does not carry the same hype that it did at the start of Alpha 2. Doing some research on the most purchased early access Steam games, I found it from the CEO of Baldur's Gate 3 that said they had 2.5 million purchases throughout their 3 years of early access development, or just over 800,000 sales on average per year. I don't think Ashes of Creation will come close to these sales because Intrepid doesn't carry the same recognition and history of delivering on video games that Larian Studios does. And this is not meant as an insult. Larian Studios has been around for over a decade. They have produced a lot of games. They have a history of delivering quality products. Intrepid Studios is working on their first game. They don't have that history. I did find some announcements of games like Mortal Online 2 announcing 100,000 sales a few months into their early access, and Gloria Victis adding 200,000 to theirs, but nothing I could verify. And with Gloria Victis folding so early after early access, I wouldn't really hold much weight in what they were saying at the time. They very well could have been padding their numbers in order to get more investors into their game. However, we can do some more quick numbers. For every 100,000 sales, the total profit will be $5 million, 100,000 times 50. And up to the first 200,000 sales, Steam takes a 30% cut on the proceeds. So for the first 200,000 sales, Intrepid will net $7 million and Steam will net $3 million. For the next $40 million in sales, Steam will take 25% and Intrepid will take 75%. Now let's briefly look at what kind of costs Intrepid is currently running. I'm not going to do a deep dive here. I'm just going to look at a very brief overview so we have kind of a grasp as to a ballpark of where they're at. They currently have about 250 developers in San Diego, California. The average salary for a developer in San Diego is anywhere from $105,000 to $122,000, but we will round it down to $100,000 to make it easy. Now, ignoring server costs, studio costs, and all the other costs for video game production, in just salaries, it costs Intrepid over $25 million per year to keep running. It wouldn't surprise me if the overall cost per year is around $40 million for the total development of Ashes of Creation. With those numbers in mind, they would need $34 million in sales on Steam to pay for 1 year of just salaries, or 680,000 copies to break even per year for salaries in development. Intrepid isn't the usual small market GoFundMe or indie MMORPG where a handful of people make a game, raise a bunch of money on some vision, and then sell it all to make a profit. I do not think that Ashes of Creation is a scam. I do not think that and if they are a scam, they are not making money to scam you guys. You do not employ 250 employees to try to go into early access early and then reap the profits. The entire point of a scam is to eliminate the overhead. If Intrepid is out of money, like a bunch of gamers think, with their overhead costs, they would have to average what one of the greatest games of all time did for their early access just to break even, which is unrealistic at best to just assume you're going to match Baldur's Gate 3. Now, some gamers have said that this could be a pitch to investors, to show that they can add and maintain more concurrent users in order to get more funding for the game. Keep in mind that Ashes of Creation has been in development for 9 years now, and seemingly funded mostly by Steven himself, and he's stated multiple times that he doesn't want to be, quote, in a years-long alpha. So it's definitely feasible that the game is fully funded and they want more funding to speed up the process. It's also feasible that due to the length of development, they could need more funding. I am not in there. I don't see their books. I can just see the argument for both of them here, and I'm just laying them out for you. Personally, I'm not against them gathering more funding for development. 250 developers is small for an MMORPG, so having the liquidity to carry out the vision of the game makes sense. I do not hope they are doing this at the cost of quality, though, because this game, unlike many other MMORPGs, relies on a subscription-based model, meaning that the core value comes from the players constantly playing and enjoying the systems themselves, being in there on a monthly basis, paying a monthly subscription, and buying into their cash shop for their apparel items that they're going to be selling. If they produce a product that is rushed, the game will fail in the short term, and a lot of players will move on until things get better. But things typically do not get better for Kickstarter MMORPGs, and players know this. Hell, even big companies like Amazon are folding even after good DLCs. No game is safe from a capitalist environment, so the release is important. Now, once again, I want to be clear, I do not have a horse in this race. I am laying out the numbers, the time period, and the expectations for sales. You guys can let me know in the comment section what I'm missing or what direction you think they're going and why. Now, what does Intrepid say about why they are opening up into early access? Steven says it's the next step in development and they need more testers. He also says the server costs are not cheap. Is it the next step in development, and do they need more testers? Let's dive in. To anyone that has been following Ashes of Creation for the last year, they have seen Steven Sharif iterate multiple times that they are working on server meshing and dynamic gridding, the server technology that will drive Ashes of Creation and create good large-scale PvP battles and performance. However, it has hit a snag in development. What was initially announced as possibly being ready in December of 2024 was pushed into the spring of 2025, and then the summer of 2025, and then phase 3 was delayed into the fall of 2025. They have said that they have their team focused on working on server-side bugs in this time as well. Phase 3 was always supposed to be the time that Intrepid would be more of a front-facing, player-servicing development stage, where they would focus on the player experience. You can go back and look at interviews with Steven earlier this year, where when he was asked about things like class balance, he said more of that will be coming in phase 3. But phases 1 and 2 were more of the unfun phases, where the back-end tech and the base of the game needed to be up and running. Think of it like you're building a house, right? If you want to have that really cool living room and that man's den in the basement and everything, you need to have the foundation set. You need to have the core parts of the building in place before you can have the fun stuff. So all this has made sense for me up until now. The start of phase 3 has been a repeat of phase 2 and phase 2.5, the initial delay for phase 3, leading some people to call the start of phase 3, myself included, phase 2.75, because there's been no new content, no big server performance improvements, no class balance overhauls, none of the stuff phase 3 was defined to be. However, this last week's PTR test did have some server meshing tests that worked successfully, as well as a bunch of crafting balance changes with PvP balance changes, introduction of the summoner, the Harbinger event system, and a bunch of other improvements and things coming online in December. It's been my belief since basically June that the server has held up a lot of production on their end, which is worrisome because a game without performance is a game that won't get off the ground. It doesn't matter how good your PvP is, how good the story is, how good the world looks, if people are crashing and lagging out all the time in any meaningful game event. Hell, try logging into Winstead right now. It is terrible. These tests we've had this last week may mean that the bigger parts of the server side work are done, and they can now move on to the front-facing parts of development, which would be the next step in development. Now, on top of this, for those of you other testers that have been in the game and you've been testing Alpha 2, you know this last phase that we only really had one big node on Shoal, which was Winstead. Although there were 2 other higher level nodes that were there to compete with Winstead, they didn't really have the population that Winstead did, and they really didn't bring much of a challenge. There weren't really any wars going on. There were a few, but it was just like very, very small. This exists for a variety of reasons, the reason this happened. The first one being that initially, a lot of the desert and tropic experience for nodes kept resetting at the start of the phase. So a lot of different guilds going out to level a node were not able to. This probably led to a lot of frustration and a lot of people logging off, waiting until this stuff got fixed. The state of the server was also not great for player retention. Wars were mostly non-existent because one of the main drivers of wars was fighting over caravans and the salt that ensued. This huge player loop created a situation to where This lack of a player loop created a situation to where Ashes was almost a full Care Bear environment, which also led to retention issues. To reiterate, Phase 2.75 was the most Care Bear environment ever in Alpha 2 for the sake of retention, and it was worse retention than previous phases. Hopefully, this is a lesson going forward to have the game be more in line with the game's vision. Now, maybe some of those players that left come back with a better phase, better performance, or whatever updates they are excited about. But maybe they do not. Maybe they're just done with this part in the testing phase and they're moving on to other games. Regardless, the next step in server development would be to see these nodes start to clash with one another. For each big node to have the population to rival one another and actually put a lot of the ideas of building, destruction, and rebirth into use. Having more testers at this point would ensure that the next growth in node levels in politics are tested, something with which I can't really see happening right now with the population we currently have. Also, if we were being honest about the demographic of testers, the current group is probably substantially older than the average gamer or even MMORPG enjoyer. They have the free time and excess cash to spend $1,500 to $250 on an Alpha 2 key. The Ashes of Creation community, whether they agree or not, is an echo chamber of the same voices iterating the same talking points that they have been bringing up for years. It's not that these players are wrong, but it's important to get an outside perspective at some point in development. This next phase would bring in a newer, more casual clientele, a group of players that have not read the Wikipedia 10,000 times and developed a neckbeard so thick and robust it would make a lion jealous. They are players coming in with an honest first-time experience, and their feedback would be huge for a game trying to nail their new player experience and make sure they're on the right page before a full game release. This feedback from casual players at some point is vital for the company to know whether or not people will pick up their game when it goes live. Now, the question a lot of people have is it too early for them to announce early access on Steam? And is this the time to get that feedback? And for that, I say it really depends. If we get anywhere close to what we have right now, Steam early access will initially flop. Since we have had the same content for the last 6 months, I think it's completely reasonable of the player base to assume that it is indeed too early. Intrepid has also separated their quote, true alpha from an early access game in the attempts to tell players that the experience is going to be a lot more unfinished than what they are used to. That attempted separation by Intrepid has been around to lay expectations that if you sign up for the Ashes of Creation Alpha, you are not going to get the same polish as an early access game. Going into early access on Steam removes your ability to separate the two, and people can and will justifiably measure the state of the alpha and compare it to other early access games that they play. Early access has also notoriously been downvoted by players on Steam already, so having a more unfinished version of early access available would lead to some truly awful reviews. With all of that being said, it can be summarized as this. If your goal is to have the best reviews, you don't release it to Steam. If your goal is to have the testers you need to make the best game possible going forward when you need those testers, you should not listen to the reviews to begin with. The fact of the matter is that no MMORPG truly dies in the genre. We have seen way too many resurrection cases of games that started out horribly, but were able to change course and hold a player base, or at least generate interest to give them a chance to hold a player base. I watched Throne and Liberty go through a 13-year development cycle, something that a lot of people say when a development of a game takes way too long, people are no longer interested in. Throne and Liberty had a 13-year development cycle, and they suffered some of the worst views from a beta I have ever seen, only to have over 300,000 players on Steam tested in the first few weeks. They also were on console, so they had more than 300,000 players playing Throne and Liberty. Now, obviously players didn't stay with the game long term because it still had a bunch of issues. It just frankly wasn't a very good game. But people were willing to give it a shot despite all of the bad reviews, because it was still in a testing phase during those reviews, and players know that a testing phase is different than a live release. I don't care how thick and braided your neckbeard is, how many pocket protectors you own, or how many times you have watched every single Ashes live stream. The average gamer will try a new game if it catches their interest, and all that will matter for them if they keep playing is if the game is fun at the point of release, not if it struggled in development 2 to 3 years prior. Alpha early access reviews do not make a good game. Testing, iteration, and improvement does, and Intrepid would be smart to keep the blinders on and work through the noise regardless. Now, I'm sure all this sounds pretty doom and gloom, that I'm being a hater, but there's a lot of hope for optimism, namely the amount of things they are testing and iterating on the PTR currently, which is a lot. If they can release the vast majority of the things they are testing in a relatively decent state, i.e. the content not failing so horribly that it has to be removed, like Firebrand for instance, then come December 11th, the game could be quite different than what it is right now. If the 250 developers are no longer working on server bug issues on the back end, and they can actually work on bug fixes that players are experiencing in the game, if they can actually work on balance changes and then rolling out content in a timely manner, the alpha could feel quite a bit different than what it does right now. Personally, I do not have the information to know which one it will be. So if somebody were asking me right now if they should get access, I would tell them to wait and see the first week or two in December and see what type of content they roll out. If it catches your interest, maybe look into buying. If it doesn't, then don't. If it's more of the same that we have right now, I would wait. If it really is an introduction of almost everything we've been testing with good server performance, then it could be awesome, guys. It really could. I also think it would have made a lot more sense to wait a few months and deliver to the core audience something fun and functional before it opened up to everyone else. Have the new phase still start December 11th, but don't open it up to Steam. And if all goes well, open up to Steam sales in January or February of next year, announce a wipe, and then move forward. At that, you would then have the core backing of the Alpha 2 audience. You would have them, myself included, being able to say like, hey, guys, this is pretty fun, and they are now opening it up at a lower cost. There's a lot of stuff happening right now. It looks really good. The current phase we are seeing is nowhere close to early access ready, and it will need to take huge steps to get there. This announcement could have come with a lot more hype surrounding it if the players had seen the content coming out and tested it before the early access sales. Right now, we're all just waiting to see if the new stuff is enough, which is a huge risk considering the stagnation for the last half year. This announcement of early access, considering what we have seen, does seem rushed as it stands right now, which is why the speculation is justifiably running so rampant. Words matter, in easing speculation and gaining goodwill. When words hold less value going forward, speculation will run more rampant, and this is self-inflicted. Regardless, I will be here, posting updates trying to glean into what direction December 11th will be. So if you want to see the potential train wreck, consider liking and subscribing to the channel and following along. If you want to hear early tidbits into what could be the next stage in development for a game concept I have been excited about for 3 years now, consider liking and subscribing. As it stands right now, I just don't know. That's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching, and have a nice day.